Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Complete College America Technology Seal Approval webinar featuring Trailblazer Award winner Ad Astra. My name is Nicholas Hewitt. I'm a strategy director here at Complete College America. To be mindful of everybody's time, we're going to start on time. Just brief introduction before we get started. As I mentioned, I'm Nicholas Hewitt. I work at CCA. Specifically on 15 to Finish on Purpose First, which is our onboarding strategy that helps students make informed decisions about their majors and careers. I also work on minority serving institutions projects and initiatives, as well as seal approval with some of my colleagues here. At CCA, we're already excited to share news and practices that complement and advance the work that we're doing in terms of college completion. And that's why we're very happy that you can join us for this webinar that will feature seal approval winner Ad Astra. For those who don't know, let's see if I can actually advance this. Sorry. For those who don't know much, rather about CCA, we're a nonprofit organization with 46 alliance members composed of states, systems, and consortia of institutions who are committed to share data with us and among each other, and to implement specific strategies to eliminate structural impediments to student success, to provide targeted support, and to basically increase the number of students who can graduate with good and valuable degrees at their institutions. Our mission is pretty simple. As our name implies, we're dedicated to increase the number of students who graduate and to eliminate the achievement gap. That's pretty much what we do on a daily basis. And part of the work that we're doing is not only working with the alliance members, but also try to partner with a lot of different organizations that are also dedicated to increase student success across the nation. The way we go about this work is we advocate and implement at scale a number of evidence-based strategies that you see right now that address some of the known issues that would prevent students from graduating. And while the graphic that you see here tend to be separated in three different strands, administration, advising, faculty, and a better deal. The way that CCA has worked in the last few years is to really try to incorporate all of these, not work so much a la carte, pick and choosing which strategy would be best, but to really integrate all of them into something we call a framework that we call momentum pathways. And if you've attended different strategy or different presentation from CCA, you'll hear a little bit more about the momentum pathways, but also about the different game changers. And I would encourage you to visit CCA, Complete College America's website, to learn more and to see about data, best practices, and how to get started to implement these strategy at at your institution. For us, technology is extremely important. I mean, that for us is pretty much an accelerant to the work of implementation at our institution. And the thing we're very excited about this is that Ad Astra is at the forefront. It's a great, a company that really understands higher education and that builds software to support those best practices, change, and informed decision making. And Ad Astra is the first winner of the Trailblazer Award for Structure. Silver approval at CCA is in its third year. We keep raising the bar. We keep changing the requirements to keep pushing the vendors to improve their products and to best support the institutions that use their products to help implement at scale our strategies. The way we're looking at this right now, Trailblazers Award is in three different categories: time, choice, and structure. As I mentioned, Ad Astra was the initial winner for the structure strategy, and we added structure to really close the loop on the student and academic planning process for this. So for the structure, it's not only just scheduling and resource management, but the structure section really involves collecting, analyzing, measuring data necessary for an institution to manage the resources to support our strategies and to meet the demand for faculty, and create and scheduling the sections and seats that are needed to best support students in their attempt to complete their degrees. So we're very happy to introduce Ad Astra and to let them take over, and you can hear more about their great product. Sarah.
Yes, thank you, Nicholas. I appreciate the introduction, and thank you to all attending. I'm just going to confirm that I'm sharing. Okay. So just a little bit about Ad Astra. We're very honored to have received this award from Complete College America, and appreciate that they recognize the importance of the work we do. Ad Astra has been partnering with higher education institutions for over 20 years to use the course schedule as basically as a strategic lever. The course schedule impacts many parts of the institution, and it also directly impacts students and how they navigate taking courses to finally to degree. So Ad Astra partners with over 500 higher education institutions at this time, and we really try to dig in and determine what structures could be optimized or put into place to help really facilitate velocity to degree. So what is very interesting is that many of the game-changing strategies that CCA has identified through their research and through their alliance partners actually get operationalized when you build the schedule. So many things like many of the alliance members are out there implementing or designing these game changers in academic maps and math pathways and co-requisites, and they're marketing that you need 15 credits to finish or 30 in a year in order to complete on time. But at the end of the day, really the schedule has to represent these things in a way that students can follow their pathways and their maps and actually get 15 productive credits. So today I'm going to talk a little bit about kind of the different ways that we tackle this problem, all the way from discovering and analyzing the data, designing better structures to facilitate the time to completion, and then really optimizing and delivering on those promises that we've made our students and on those structures. So scheduling is really, we're all part of this broader progress ecosystem. We're really looking to accomplish velocity and time to completion and retain these students. And that does mean that there's an ecosystem of activities and data points that need to come together to really optimize that progress. And good structures and optimized scheduling can really help support and facilitate that progress. So when we think about good scheduling and optimizing the progress that students make towards completion, we think about integrating the pathways, the student planning data, all the stuff that students are doing with their advisors and interacting with, and good pathways and advising systems, and incorporating that data into the systems that are being used by the actual colleges to create schedules. So really shifting from a historical-based schedule to truly a demand-based schedule that's meeting the students where they are and is looking forward to determine what do we need to be teaching in order to help facilitate the students' progress? And then what resources and capacity do we have to be able to put at that schedule and putting all those pieces together? And that really needs to align with the registration process as well, where we want the students, we really want to nudge them towards taking those classes at registration. And so they create a plan early on, and if the college doesn't create a schedule that matches that plan, then they might not have access to it at registration. So if we can get these three things aligned, it really does optimize and facilitate the progress cycle and the time to completion. But the course schedule even has a greater impact than just being able to optimize time to completion for students, or velocity to completion for students, by getting the right mix of courses and the right sequence and a schedule that works for them. It also has a huge impact on the institution itself. So if you think about it, when you're creating a course schedule, you're allocating time, you're allocating space, and you're allocating faculty. And those three things really make up the capacity of a higher education institution. And a lot of people think capacity is somewhat fixed. But what we have learned over the many years we've been doing this is capacity can be elastic. And if you have really good structures in place regarding the designs of the components that come into building a schedule, you can actually get more capacity at an institution. And that capacity can bubble and can reduce based on enrollment trends. So this is a very strategic enrollment management tool as well, if you think about it from that perspective of being able to match your capacity with your enrollments and do some modeling of that in the future. So today I'm going to talk a little bit about how we use analytics to discover where a college is today, and then how we use that discovery to influence the designs of certain structures related to scheduling, and then actually how we use software to optimize and deliver the most efficient and student-friendly schedules out of those designs. So let's talk a little bit about the discovery process and some of the things that we do when we work with our partner institutions to start thinking about using the course schedule as a strategic lever and as a completion lever on their campus. Many campuses that we go into to partner with, we really have to talk about their readiness, not only for software implementations, but for a cultural shift in the way they approach the course schedule. For those of you that are on campuses, you probably have some insight into how schedules are built. It's usually a very decentralized process that involves sometimes hundreds of faculty or chairs or deans or administrative staff in kind of pulling together a schedule. And so this isn't only just a software implementation, it's a business process shift, which does have some cultural implications. It touches a lot of different institutional players. And so we really want to look at the readiness for that and prepare campuses so they're successful in their change management efforts and in communicating the why with faculty and other stakeholders in this process. The other thing that we are looking at is trying to get kind of a baseline or a benchmark on forecasting what the velocity to completion is. So this is really the other side of the coin of thinking about graduation rates. We're looking at a metric that is a forecast of velocity in order for us to be able to try to intervene earlier, make changes, and then see if that forecasted velocity, if we can move the needle in that way. So all of our clients, all of our partners that we work with that have adopted guided pathways and have put them into our system, we are actually creating a model for them. And again, the model is really used to kind of give them a baseline of where they are today at the aggregate level across an entire college or university, and then be able to benchmark that so they can see if they're moving the needle at all in their interventions. And the way we break this down is we're really looking at velocity, degree velocity, which is a student's velocity against their specific pathway or degree path, versus total velocity, which is a student's progress against the total number of credit hours that they have accumulated against that degree. And so a lot of those credit hours don't necessarily apply to a certain program because of transfers, because of degree changes, sometimes just because unknowingly they're taking a class that they thought would apply and it doesn't. But we look at that as a productive ratio, basically, what percentage of the credits students are taking that are actually applying to the degrees that they are currently in. And then we're putting some metrics out there about the projection, the model. That's all it is a model of the average time to degree for this particular college. And again, that's a number that we want to benchmark and track and make changes to. And it's really used for that reason, is for us to be able to see if we're moving the needle and to look at some trends there. At an individual campus, though, they can drill down that aggregate data and start to find information inside of that aggregated data that might help them gain some insights into their particular students. So that data can be broken down by program of study, where they're saying, okay, if I'm looking at my communications program, my total velocity looks good. And so students are taking enough credit hours, but they might not all be applying to that particular pathway. And it allows them to dig a little deeper, all the way down to the individual student level, which I'll show you in a little bit, to discover some insights that may help them refine the structure of their pathways. Another kind of key metric for early intervention that we're providing our clients is insight into early momentum. And we're using the same momentum framework as Complete College America, where we're really focused on purpose first, and getting 30 credits in that first year, 9 credits of the in their program of study, or their some people call it a meta major area or focal area. Each of our clients can define these parameters based on where they are in their implementation of these strategies, and then really ensuring that they get those gateway courses early on. So what the Ad Astra products are able to do, because we have all that rich student data, academic history, pathway data, student plans, degree audit, is we can measure a student's progress against this early momentum criteria. And what we want to do is provide our clients specific data about individual students so that there's an opportunity to intervene maybe after the fall semester or in the spring semester to encourage summer enrollment. And so it's really not just measuring in the rears, what percentage of our students hit the 30 credits in the first year or the 9 credits, but it's really structured or presented in a way that you can have early intervention and very targeted outreach to clients who, to students who are at risk of missing some of these important benchmarks. Again, this is also something that we can benchmark from a peer-to-peer perspective at a state level or at a system level. Both velocity and momentum year can be looked at on the aggregate from a benchmarking perspective. And lastly, another thing that we really look at is discovering your demand. And I'll talk specifically about how we get at demand data, but ultimately we want to build what we call a demand-based schedule. And the demand-based schedule means that it's really focused on what the students need, and the different student populations across all of your different programs, and then building the schedule from that perspective. And so the data that comes out of our system, which you see here, is really just that, where we're looking at how many seats do we really need to be teaching within a certain college, within a certain subject, within a certain course, and how many sections should we be teaching in this upcoming schedule based on students' progress through their pathways. And so this is, at the end of the day, is the data that we're really using to help build the course schedule. And then lastly, the other kind of discovery that we like to go through is, what is your capacity? And what are your current structures that might be impacting positively or negatively the capacity of your institution? Because the capacity of your institution, like I said earlier, is really made up of three things. Most people think about capacity as space, but capacity is your faculty. You know, how many faculty do you have? What are the capacity of those within certain programs of study? Because obviously the faculty have expertise that they can apply to certain programs. And so you really have to look at that, not just at the aggregate level of a college or university, but you have to kind of drill down and start to look at capacity at the programmatic level, because that's very important when it's related to the capacity of a program and for your ability to be able to serve students that are coming into those programs, and meeting that capacity and expanding it as demand expands. It's also capacity has to do with space, and it has to do with time. So just to share one of our kind of go-to evaluations of structure is really looking at the way in which colleges and universities are rolling out classes in the schedule. Many have a Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Tuesday, Thursday, and they have maybe a grid that is standard, but what we find out at, I would say, 8 out of 10 of our partner institutions is that there are a great deal of exceptions made to that grid. Sometimes in the neighborhood of 50% of classes being taught could be off grid, even higher. But that creates a certain amount of what we call waste, which is basically white space. It's overlap where a faculty member is being taken out of commission because they might be crossing over 2 slots, and a room or a classroom or a lab is being taken out of commission because it has a crossover of 2 slots. And looking at alignment here can have a great impact on capacity, but it also can have a really great impact on the student's experience at registration. Because when there is a lot of overlap, not only is it harmful to the institution from a capacity perspective, but it's also harmful to the student from an access perspective. Okay, so now we're going to move into kind of the design component. So I talked a little bit about how we look at things like velocity, early momentum, capacity, demand, in order to kind of get a baseline of where an institution is. And what that does is that really informs the next kind of stage of work that we engage our partners in. And that's really looking at the design. This is where structure becomes extremely important, and there's a lot of opportunity to mitigate structures, like operational structures at a college or university that may be impeding students' progress to that final goal. So let's talk a little bit about how we contribute to that work. The pathways work is obviously something that many of the alliance partners are in the process of working through, and they're partnering with the academic units on their campuses, and they're thinking very thoughtfully and intentionally about how to design these pathways. And as they do that, many of our partner institutions are organizing those pathways, but they are doing that on a website or on a document, on some sort of in some sort of a format that is flat, so to speak, that they're using to guide and advise students through their academic program. And what we are able to do, what Platinum Analytics is able to do, is take those pathways and put them in a system that can analyze them, that can watch how students progress through them, and that can operationalize them through the schedule. And so that pathways framework, that pathways structure, and the design of that pathway is very critical. And we feel like designing pathways is an iterative process. You start by getting something out there, and then if you're watching how students are progressing through that and sequencing their courses, it will give you insights as to how you can make refinements going forward. And then structured scheduling. And structured scheduling is something that we've talked to CCA about for a very long time. And it's extremely important to the non-traditional learner, I would say, especially, or the returning adult. And but I think it's important for all student populations, because our students are in large part non-traditional today, where they're juggling multiple things in life. And so having a predictable schedule for them, having one that's structured in a way that they can come and take a group of classes together, conflict-free, and then still have a good chunk of time outside of that to meet their other demands is really important and goes a long way in retention and time to completion. You have to design a structured schedule. You can optimize within it from a software perspective as you get further down and you understand demand and how students are moving through the programs. But structured scheduling starts with a good design. And that design might be different for different types of programs and for different student populations. So, for example, many people are doing structured scheduling for freshmen. And that's really to ensure that there's capacity in the schedule to get those freshmen, those first-time students, into the right classes, the right mix of classes, and typically related to that momentum, those momentum year benchmarks. Get them into those introductory classes and their areas of interest to ensure they're getting started on the right foot and they're not starting off behind. But there's also other cohort-based scheduling, for example, like a nursing program or a more technical program. So we see all kinds of different models. And they range in structure, and those can be designed and implemented simultaneously for different programs and different student populations. And kind of the last piece on design is thinking about policy. So policy should, there is best practice, and then there is policy. And our consultative team works, like I said, with over 500 colleges and universities. We have a great deal of expertise about best practices and what has worked where, and we share that with our member institutions, our partner institutions. However, policy isn't a one-size-fits-all. Policy needs to be really designed based on that discovery phase. So when we're working with an individual college or university, it's really about thinking about what their particular challenges are related to space, related to capacity, faculty capacity, program capacity, related to their meeting pattern grid, and then creating a policy that is specific to moving the needle in the way, the strategic direction that that particular college or university is trying to move it. So we really want to spend a lot of time consulting on policy, as well as sharing best practice. And then lastly, it's the deliver phase. And the deliver is actually producing the schedule. So we've done this discovery process where we've identified kind of a baseline. We have the ability to benchmark certain things against other community colleges, other four-year colleges or universities, public, private, regional, whatever it may be, just to provide some context. And then we get into, we've built really good designs around pathways, around grids, around structured schedules, and now we want to deliver on those. We actually want to roll that stuff out. So what we're looking at here is the Platinum Analytics software application, and I wanted to start by showing kind of the pathways component of it, and then how that rolls out into the actual schedule recommendations and the scheduling piece. So what you're looking at here is one pathway for biological sciences and human biology, and you're seeing the pathway basically laid out as courses or course groups in a sequence. And so this is the recommended sequence of courses or groups of courses, like general educations or humanities or an elective, whatever the groups of courses may be for a particular pathway. And then our application actually, because it brings in active student data with academic history, it applies each of those students individually to the pathways that they are associated. And what that does is it allows a picture at the individual student level of the classes that they have taken, what's been transferred in, what of those transfers, what is productive for this particular pathway. So it could be that they transferred from another institution and they changed majors. There's a lot of reasons why things could be, again, unproductive against that particular pathway. And then it also shows where they are taking classes in progress. And then the system goes ahead and it applies the pathway all the way out until they have completed all the requirements of that. So it basically creates a plan for that student based on the rest of the pathway requirements. And this is really important data to have because it's used for scheduling. So as you can see, like this system planned, we can then take this data and aggregate that up and use it for scheduling. For our progressing students. But in addition to that, the system actually does enrollment modeling or simulation so that it's not just planning for students that are enrolled at the institution today, but it's also accounting for attrition, for transfer students, for new start students, and making sure that the schedule that we build next fall has enough capacity for everybody, not just our progressing students. But this picture of a progressing student is really helpful, not just for scheduling, but I'll show you in a minute how it's helpful for pathways refinement. So we can glean a lot of insights from taking student-specific progression through pathways, which a student on path obviously looks very nice and neat and orderly. However, if we look at these patterns of a student off path, we can really glean some insights. So what our application does is it provides data that says, we're seeing students take these courses out of sequence at the aggregate level. And here are some of the courses that they're taking late or out of sequence that are most prevalent. And so we can use that data not just for schedule planning, but to go back to the pathway and ask the question, why are they taking this out of sequence? So for example, here we have what we call delay impact, which is that we're looking at the number of terms and the number of students that that have taken this particular course late, which has created a delay impact on the aggregate of over 5,000 terms have been delayed. And so we're also looking at what the historical enrollment is in here. So there's a variety of reasons, again, students could be taking these particular courses late according to the pathway structures, but one of them could be access to those courses. So we can start to drill into the data to determine the why, and whether it's because the fill rates are high. So for this particular course, historically, it's filled at over 100%. So that could be a course access issue that could be solved by better scheduling, offering another section. But there's others where maybe there's been room in that course, but maybe we're not advising them to take that particular course. Or we can dig in and we can look at the DFW rates of that course and determine if whether or not, where it's being offered in the pathway has an impact on, on the academic success rates of that particular course. So lots of good data here that just can be used for things beyond scheduling, but helping redesign those very important structures. And again, this is just more of the same, but general education courses are something that have to be offered in every program of study. And so for our partners, they really want to focus on general education classes because those typically tend to get bottlenecked. One example is what we see is that as schools are defining their pathways, as they're building their pathways, almost everybody's putting the gateway English and math classes in the first term of their pathway. And what that's doing is it's bottlenecking. It's pushing all the demand to that first term, and there's not enough capacity to really fulfill that need. And so we're really using this kind of data to go back and say, maybe we need to smooth out the general education requirements a little bit across all the pathways so that we don't bottleneck these students. And this kind of data is really used for those kinds of discussions around the design. And again, because we have information on the individual student, their academic history, and their progress against their pathways, and their degree rules and their degree requirements, we can surface information too at the course level and at the aggregate level. What courses are being taken that don't meet a program requirement, and how common is that across multiple programs? And is it because they're an elective? Is it because they've just been unsuccessful and there's a high DFW rate? But that kind of data bubbles up for conversation to help keep iterating on those important structures. And then lastly, this is the Platinum Analytics product that the end user interacts with to complete the schedule. So this is the information that's disseminated more broadly out to the program chairs, to the deans, that help them be informed when they go to say, yeah, I'm going to resource 5 sections of general chemistry this year, or I'm not. I think I can dial that back. It looks like our demand is kind of declining for this particular course, and so maybe I'll use that resource, that faculty member, to teach surface chemistry instead of general chemistry. And so the application just kind of brings those schedule change recommendations forward to the schedulers so that they can make student-informed, demand-based decisions when they're creating a schedule. And again, I just wanted to iterate that the Platinum Analytics application, it goes all the way down to the lowest level of data so that we can ensure that the recommendations are not based on cohorts or trends, but they're actually based on the individuals that are moving through the institution at that point in time. And And we can segment this in all kinds of ways. We can look at student populations, we can look at programs, and then we can look all the way up at the aggregate level by campus, by college. And it's really helpful to be able to see that data at all kinds of levels for planning and scheduling purposes. In addition, we're able to identify potential conflicts in a schedule for students, where two classes might be scheduled overlapping. That's going to create a potential conflict. And so, or where you might be trying to create a block schedule or a structured schedule that potentially has some conflicts in it. So trying to identify those things prior to a student even hitting these issues at registration. And lastly, I just wanted to point out that the schedule has a very large financial impact on a college or university. So while scheduling is extremely important for the student, and we really want to optimize a student's velocity and minimize the barriers, especially access barriers in that progress ecosystem, if you show the dollars and cents side of it, sometimes it could be very motivating for the institution as well. So, and all the stakeholders within the institution. And this is also a real opportunity where if savings are realized or additional tuition revenue is realized, that money can go towards other strategic initiatives at the institution. We have several clients that have closely tracked additional revenue generated through additional credit hour registration, often by existing students, so not proportional to enrollment increases, just additional registrations, additional credit hour load, because there's been more capacity and better access in a course schedule. And they've taken those dollars and they've repurposed them to hire more full-time faculty to continue to support the capacity demands and the enrollment demands at their college or university. And so it's important to track, not only can offering the right mix of courses yield additional revenue for a college, a university, a program, a department, but also really understanding where to tighten your belt a little bit on the schedule and use your resources in another way can also yield savings from not maybe teaching as many sections of a course as you once did. And so I just want to close by saying that that there is large ROI on demand-based scheduling. Some of the outcomes that we track and the results that we see are better fill rates within courses, which then produce better utilization numbers. Many of our states require space utilization to be presented to the state level and to justify additional capital funds related to facilities and new buildings. And we have many clients that use this data, that utilization data and that fill rate data, in order to report back to the state or to justify some sort of additional funding in their capacity. We see fewer cancellations and ads during the scheduling process, which is extremely disruptive to both students and faculty to have classes being canceled from the schedule or quickly added back and to be able to resource those. And so if we can do better planning on the front end, we see less of that reaction on the back end. And as I mentioned, there's a real financial ROI to doing real demand-based scheduling. So hopefully I was able to give you a good overview of some of the work that, that colleges and universities can do in this area through a software implementation or just through consultation. And many colleges and universities dig into this on their own and then realize that they want to get more sophisticated with it. And that's when they may come ask us to partner with them and help them advance this work even further, because it's such great opportunity for all parties involved to really look at the schedule as as a strategy. And we're also seeing more and more of our partners really institute a team, a working team that watches this stuff and cares for this stuff and talks about designs, and they meet all the time. They meet year round. They often meet with as a student success committee or as an enrollment management committee, and they've just added the topic of strategic course scheduling to that broader enrollment management student success completion committee, because they've realized that this is an important thing to care for year round, not just during the scheduling process. I would like to invite any of the participants to submit questions through the Q&A panel. And my colleague Laura Kelly and I would be happy to respond to those. So we don't have any questions right now. A couple of pieces of information I might share that you might be wondering. Ad Astra does work, obviously, every campus within your state or within your system has to produce a course schedule. And so oftentimes people think about the course schedule as something that an individual program chair or dean or college owns. However, we really feel that we're starting to see this work taken to scale, and we're working now more and more with entire states and entire systems, especially community college systems, where this work can be huge, can be very impactful very quickly to community colleges, and trying to get some continuity across the community college system has been very successful in this area.
Laura or Sarah, there are two questions in the chat, if you don't mind looking at those and potentially answering them, please.
Absolutely. Okay. Oh, are you able to receive a copy of today's Zoom meeting? Yes, we will make a copy available. Both, I think, from CCA as well as Ad Astra will have one on your website. So that question was asked quite a few times. So we will make that available, and we can follow up with that. So what is the biggest challenge most institutions face about the course schedule? I would say, the first challenge is what I mentioned first, which is just really readiness of the culture, the capacity for change, the commitment to change. Those are all super important when embarking on this work. And so that is typically the first challenge that people face. And then the second is communication, and really getting everybody on board, because this does impact everybody across the organization. So the challenges are less technical or getting the data or making decisions, and more about getting everybody on board, focus on a common end, why we're doing this, why this work is important, and getting everybody bought in. The next question is, we asked if somebody asked if we have resources for best practices in creating an effective grid. We do have some content on our website related to that. We also offer consultative services. Again, not one grid fits all. So we go in and look at every institution and kind of identify, how they teach courses, what are the different contact hours that they offer courses in, and then figure out the best ways to accommodate that. But if I could give you one kind of one best practice, it's look at the 80%, look at the most common and build a grid for that, and then think about ways to incorporate the anomalies, the ones that don't fit. And so you really have to start with the majority. And I would also say, make sure you understand the pedagogical demands behind that and the faculty perspective and the why they're teaching that way, so that you can accommodate that, and but you can do that in a way that there's structure, not in just kind of a one-off way where everybody is doing their own thing. Must a college or university have a full schedule of classes built out in the active schedule for the student planner feature to work properly? So that's a great question. So the schedule piece is not necessary. So we actually pull out historical schedules, and that gives us one data point. The more important piece to have ready, you don't have to have your full schedule built out in order for us to look at student plans. The most important piece, though, is the pathway structure. So that's where we find the most gaps in the data being available for us to be able to do that kind of forecasting. Now, we have a lot of workarounds to that. So I definitely am not saying that you have to have every pathway structure built out for every program of study on your campus in order to do this work, because I would say less than 10% of our partners are there. And many of them are doing this work. But even if you've done some work around thinking about your focal areas or your meta majors, or we can group together general education requirements, or there's a lot of different things that we can look at demand for that aren't all just the pathways demand. But I would say, no, you don't have to have a full schedule of classes built out, but understanding, what you're trying to nudge the student to do, and having that in our system is the piece that we would want to focus on. Okay, I think we have responded to all of the questions. We will have recordings of this, and we can disseminate it out, as well as I'm sure Complete College America and Ad Astra will have these recordings available on their website. Any other content that you are interested in regarding this work, you can go to aais.com and get a lot of information or request more information that way. Thank you for your time this afternoon, and thank you for your interest in using the course schedule as a strategic lever.
Thank you, everybody, and have a good rest of your day.